Hey guys, tonight we take a slow stroll back to the dusty roads of ancient India, where you wander through the heat-hazed morning of the 3rd century BCE. The sun glints off massive stone pillars that rise like tree trunks out of the plains, covered in script you can't read, but somehow, you feel like they're watching you. Quiet, patient, judging your snack choices. A man once ruled here, an emperor named Ashoka, but instead of ending his reign with dramatic wars and palace intrigue, he did something different, something quieter. He carved his thoughts into rocks. Not exactly thrilling, but hey, neither is this video. And that's the point. You might not survive the excitement of a man who spent his twilight years lecturing his empire via boulders. Seriously, it's okay to yawn now. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And as always, I love hearing where you're watching from. Drop your location and your local time down below. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You're standing in the ashes of a battlefield. Kalinga, the name tastes bitter, like the copper of old blood. It's here that Ashoka, freshly crowned and hungry for expansion, unleashes his armies and wins. Except, not really, because the victory comes at the price of 100,000 dead, thousands more displaced, and an emperor with a permanent knot in his stomach. You can imagine him there, walking among the bodies, barely hearing the cheering. The ground doesn't feel like a prize. It feels like guilt. This moment breaks something open in him, or maybe breaks something off. Either way, he retreats from war, converts to Buddhism, and instead of planning his next conquest, he begins writing, not letters, not memoirs, but messages, little sermons, really, about how people should live. And he doesn't tuck them into scrolls. He orders them carved into stone. Because nothing says, "I'm serious about kindness," like permanently chiseling it into a mountainside. Ashoka's first edicts are simple. Instructions. Almost. Be nice to your parents. Don't kill animals unnecessarily. Honor truth. Respect teachers. It's like a giant ancient refrigerator checklist. If your refrigerator was 30 feet tall and weighed 20 tons. But these messages aren't just for nobles or monks. Ashoka insists they're for everyone. Farmers, merchants, prison guards, even the guy who sells weird herbal toothpaste at the market. Everyone. So, he makes them public. Literally. He orders them inscribed along roads, near city gates, in busy markets, anywhere a passing traveler might stop to tie their sandal or argue about goat prices. The idea is beautifully simple. You don't come to the wisdom. The wisdom comes to you. One of the earliest edicts talks about animal sacrifices. Ashoka says he used to order 1,000 animals slaughtered daily in the palace kitchens. Now, just 2. And even those, he's thinking of letting go. It's a weirdly personal confession. Like if a politician today tweeted, "Used to eat 12 hot dogs a night. Cutting back." You can't help but wonder how this went over with the royal chefs. But Ashoka isn't trying to be popular anymore. He's trying to be good. Or at least good adjacent. He speaks of Dhamma, not exactly religion. Not quite law. Just a way of being decent. Of not being terrible, even when no one's watching. There's one inscription where he says he visits prisons to personally check if people are being treated fairly. Imagine the emperor showing up while you're peeling lentils in a dim cell, just to make sure your bedding is soft enough. A little unsettling, sure, but also weirdly comforting. Historians still argue whether this transformation was genuine spiritual awakening or clever political rebranding. Was Ashoka truly heartbroken, or did he just figure peace was cheaper than war? We may never know. The sources are stone cold silent on that one. Literally. And speaking of sources, here's a fringe detail for you. Some of the edicts mention strange omens, like comets and talking animals. One line even refers to heavenly signs, blessing Ashoka's moral turn. Which, depending on your worldview, Either proves divine favor or that someone was sniffing too much incense near the scribe's table. But the edicts keep coming. Not in scrolls, not shouted by town criers. Carved, hammered into permanence by stoneworkers who must have had the forearms of demigods. Imagine spending your day under a blazing sun, chiseling the words, "Be gentle to servants," into an incooperative slab of granite. Only to realize you misspelled servants in Brahmi script. That's a rough day at the office. You brush your hand across one of these inscriptions now. The grooves are still deep, though smoothed by time. The letters snake across the surface with a grace that feels deliberate. Almost tender, like someone whispering advice to the future. Ashoka doesn't sign these with pomp. No royal fanfare. He refers to himself simply as Devanampriya Priyadarsi, beloved of the gods. He who looks with affection. Humble, but not without a bit of branding flair. Move over. Live, laugh, love. Even today, travelers in India stumble across one of these stones, half swallowed by weeds, flanked by indifferent cows, and wonder, what's this? And if they squint hard enough, they find echoes of a man who chose peace. Not with a bang, but with a chisel. You walk now beside the stone, past it, down a trail where cartwheels have grooved the dirt into soft troughs. Your feet kick up ancient dust, the same dust that might have clung to Ashoka's sandals 2,000 years ago. You'd think being emperor meant being carried everywhere on a velvet litter. But Ashoka actually preferred to roam, not for conquest anymore, but for inspection, for instruction, for edicts. He traveled not just with guards and priests, but with stonemasons, scribes, and ox carts full of carving tools. Wherever he stopped, a rock might soon begin to speak. But let's slow things down. You've arrived at one of his major rock edicts. Not a pillar, this time, but a flat cliffside with words curling across it like ancient vines. Ashoka's tone here is firmer, a little more dad voice. He talks about harmony between religions, the value of self-restraint, the need for administrators not to be corrupt, or at least less corrupt than usual. In Edict 7, he basically begs everyone to stop fighting about beliefs. All religions seek self-control. He says, so maybe chill? Okay, not the exact words, but you get the idea. It's refreshingly practical. No lightning bolts or divine threats. Just do better. You can practically hear Ashoka sighing as he dictates, probably rubbing his temples while someone nearby feeds a parrot grapes. It's a vibe. The quirky part? He doesn't just carve these edicts in one language. He goes multilingual. Brahmi in India, Kharosthi in the northwest, Greek and Aramaic near Afghanistan. Yeah, Ashoka's PR campaign is truly continental. Imagine a public service announcement broadcast on every frequency, from local dialect to international trade lingo. One fragment discovered in Kandahar, yes, that Kandahar, mentions Ashoka's moral code in Greek. The grammar's a bit wonky, but the message is clear. Hey neighbors, please stop stabbing each other. Eat more lentils. Try meditation. Historians still argue whether Ashoka actually wrote these messages himself or dictated them, or whether they were polished up by courtly editors. Maybe he had a favorite scribe who slipped in extra commas when the emperor wasn't looking. But the tone, gentle, slightly exasperated, persistently hopeful, feels consistent, like an uncle who gives the same speech every Diwali. And what's really wild, Ashoka doesn't push Buddhism aggressively. He doesn't say, convert or else. Instead, he promotes Dhamma, a kind of universal ethics. Be kind, be fair, keep your animals alive a little longer. The elephants appreciate it. Oh, and yes, elephants. He had a thing for them. You picture a royal parade where elephants wear silk headdresses and blink slowly in the sun while monks chant nearby and someone reads out a new edict about dental hygiene or something. One inscription even says, I have ordered banyan trees planted along roads, wells dug, and mango groves created for the benefit of humans and animals. The emperor is out here landscaping for squirrels. It's oddly wholesome. But even the best stone doesn't last forever. You crouch beside a partially broken edict now. One corner snapped off, lichen spreading across the surface like slow green gossip. Half the words are gone. The rest murmur on, stubborn. Ashoka didn't just carve these for his own time. He explicitly said so. In one edict, he writes, "In the future, kings will be born who may not value Dhamma." It's like he knew his reforms were temporary. A brief shimmer of calm before the empire fell back into chaos. He wrote anyway, maybe for you. The words aren't flashy. No curses. No glory. Just reminders. Take care of each other. Tell the truth. Look after your elders. And yeah, don't sacrifice goats unless absolutely necessary. You hear that one and think, define necessary. But we move on. The empire stretches around you now, not in walls and battlements, but in stone voices. Ashoka has outlived his temples, his palaces, even his armies. What's left? Sentences, quiet ones, on rocks. And here's your fringe tidbit of the night. Archaeologists once found an edict fragment being used as a washing stone in a remote village. Locals had no idea it carried imperial wisdom. They just liked its smooth surface. Centuries of Dharma reduced to laundry duty. Another fragment, mistaken for scrap, was turned into a temple doorstep. So yeah, you may have walked over one of Ashoka's moral pep talks without even realizing it. Makes you wonder what else we're standing on. The road grows quieter now. The wind softening into hushes through dry leaves. You pass an animal hospital. Well, what used to be one. Ashoka was probably the only emperor in world history to issue laws about veterinary care. Don't hurt cows. Treat injured birds. It's like ancient PETA with better hats. There's even a stone note where he says, "Everywhere, I have ordered that medical herbs be planted for humans and for animals." Imagine the imperial gardener receiving that memo and having to source tiger balm for squirrels. Ashoka's priorities may sound mundane, healthcare, ethics, no stabbing, but that's exactly what makes them feel timeless. Empires usually leave behind tales of conquest. This one left behind advice. And here comes the wind down. Let's soften everything now. The stones begin to fade behind you. Their edges blur. Their inscriptions feel more like gentle echoes than commands. The road flattens into silence. The only sound is the whisper of grass brushing your ankles. The sun dips behind a hill, washing the scene in honey-colored light. You pause beside a weathered pillar. One last edict half hidden by time and moss. It says something simple. Maybe it's a line about harmony, or just a reminder to be patient. It barely matters. The feeling is what lingers. You breathe in slowly. There's no more conquering, no more carving, just stillness. Ashoka's voice dims like a lantern being turned down for the night. And as you walk gently into the twilight of his world, you realize, not all legacies are built with swords. Some are etched in stone, then carried softly across time, by the wind, by silence, by you. You're still moving, but the world feels slower now, like time itself has started to stretch. The rocks beneath your feet whisper in languages you don't quite know. Brahmi curls like vines, Kharasthi steps sharply like goat hooves, and somewhere in the back of your mind, you swear you hear faint Greek vowels squabbling with Aramaic consonants over syntax. The edicts aren't confined to one part of Ashoka's empire. They're scattered, strategically, like breadcrumbs across ancient highways, trade routes, and pilgrimage trails. You imagine walking for days and suddenly bumping into one beside a watering hole. As a camel chews loudly behind you. Surprise. Morality time. This network of stone wisdom covers an area larger than modern-day India. The edicts show up as far west as Kandahar, deep into the reaches of what is now Afghanistan. That's where one of the bilingual Greek-Aramaic inscriptions was found, suggesting Ashoka was either shockingly inclusive or had a very persuasive foreign policy intern. You picture that inscription being carved under the glaring sun, with a translator muttering, "Wait, how do you say, compassion, in Aramaic again?" and the mason sighing loudly while sharpening his chisel for the 17th time that day. And get this, some edicts were written in Prakrit, the everyday language of the people, not Sanskrit, the hoity-toity classical script reserved for highbrow texts and divine declarations. Ashoka wanted farmers, merchants, and traveling monks to read his rules too, or, more likely, to gather around while someone read them out loud like ancient community theater. Historians still argue whether this populist language choice was clever policy or just convenient logistics. Maybe Sanskrit carvers were booked out, or maybe Ashoka genuinely wanted to reach the average goat herder who couldn't read but had opinions about Dhamma anyway. You trail your fingers along the next rock. The edict here mentions officers of righteousness, a kind of ancient traveling inspector general. These Dharma Mahamantras were sent out to promote ethical behavior and make sure people weren't sacrificing too many chickens out of boredom. It's unclear what exactly these officers did. Some historians think they organized public welfare programs. Others argue they mostly filed complaints about loud temple bells and improper mango stories. The truth, as always, probably lies somewhere between tax auditor and social worker with a clipboard. And here's your oddity of the night. One inscription lists the exact number of animals Ashoka spares in various rituals. No joke, only 2 peacocks and 1 deer may be sacrificed on feast days. But even this shall cease. You can almost hear the palace chef whispering. But the roast peacock was so good. Ashoka even banned animal sacrifices at his own palace. An odd move for a royal court known to serve feasts that could make a modern buffet blush. Imagine the imperial butler trying to make lentils sound exciting to visiting dignitaries. Today's special is boiled virtue with a side of moderation. Still, his message wasn't about deprivation, it was about compassion. He wanted his subjects to reflect, not suffer. If the empire had a slogan, it might have been, "Try not to be terrible." Also, drink more herbal tea. And yet, silence eventually overtook it all. You reach a lonely stretch of road now. The edict here is crumbling, worn smooth by time and wind. A shepherd passes by, not even glancing at it. You wonder how many people walked past these messages over the centuries without reading a single word. Maybe some thought the carvings were weather predictions, or graffiti, or just old rock stuff. Ashoka had hoped his words would endure. But words need listeners. And history? History has a terrible memory unless someone rewrites it. Which leads us to the long, dull afterlife of the edicts. For hundreds of years, no one knew who Ashoka was. His name faded from common knowledge. India splintered into smaller kingdoms. The Mauryan dynasty disappeared like steam from a kettle. And the stones, those glorious, preachy stones, just sat there, waiting. Some became landmarks. Others were quarried or painted over. A few pillars toppled in earthquakes. Their lion capitals buried in dirt, like the forgotten heads of philosophical statues. Then, in the 19th century, British colonial officials stumbled upon these strange inscriptions. Who wrote this? They asked. And why is it everywhere? Cue a centuries-long decoding effort. It was like trying to solve a giant crossword puzzle with only half the clues and a very smug crossword editor. One guy in particular, James Prinsep, cracked the Brahmi script like an old egg in 1837. Suddenly, the stones began to talk again. And guess what they said? They said, "Hey, be nice, eat less meat, call your mom." Okay, not exactly, but close. And here's the quirky little footnote. One of the edicts was found in a village where locals believed the stone could cure disease. They'd scrape bits off and brew it into tea. Yes, they drank the edict. If nothing else, Ashoka would probably appreciate the commitment to absorption of ethical values. You reach a clearing now. One last pillar stands in the fading sun, casting a shadow that ticks slowly toward night. The lion on top, India's national emblem today, looks bored but noble. Like it's been waiting for you. You don't read the words anymore. You just feel them. They've done their job. The stone is cool beneath your hand, even as the last of the sun seeps away and the stars begin their slow, smug reveal. You're still standing beside the pillar. That dignified lion staring into the nothingness like it knows how all this ends. And maybe it does. Ashoka's edicts don't rage or dazzle or threaten. They don't scream across history. They whisper. They murmur. They persist, quietly, insistently, like the background hum of a ceiling fan when you're trying to fall asleep. It's in this quiet that they get their power, or their stubbornness, after being rediscovered and translated. These edicts stirred the curiosity of not only archaeologists but also nationalists, poets, politicians, and bored civil servants with too much monsoon and not enough paperwork. And just like that, Ashoka got his second life, a renaissance for a ruler who was all but erased from the collective memory, yet somehow had left his journal entries carved into cliffs for anyone with the patience to look. You picture some early scholar squinting at an inscription with a magnifying glass, muttering, "This guy again," because Ashoka is nothing if not thorough. He didn't just issue one or two edicts. He went for dozens: major rock edicts, minor rock edicts, pillar edicts, cave edicts. The man probably considered the back of a cow a potential surface for moral instruction. And here's a thought. The content never really changes. It's not some evolving philosophical treatise. No dramatic plot twist. No scandalous betrayals. It's, be kind, don't kill, obey your parents, on eternal repeat. You're basically reading the ancient version of the live, laugh, love sign hanging in your aunt's kitchen, except carved into a 6-ton boulder. Still, historians can't agree on one thing. Was Ashoka sincere in his transformation? Or was all this edict writing a soft power flex? Did he really have a moral awakening after the Kalinga War? Or did he just want to control his empire without spending a fortune on swords and catapults? They debate whether his turn to Buddhism was a personal spiritual journey or a strategic way to unify a fragmented realm through peaceful, shared values. Was he a monk in a crown? Or a king in monk's clothing? The robes get a little slippery after 2,000 years. And here's where things get oddly cozy. You follow the thread of the edicts not just through time, but through their reuse. Some became cornerstones of temples. Others were relocated to museums. A few, tragically, were repurposed in architecture. Like, oh hey, let's just use this ancient moral decree as a nice patio slab. The past doesn't just fade. It gets walked on. Quite literally. You sit down under another pillar, feeling your back against its chill. This one is tall, reedy. Almost. The script curls up its side like ivy. It tells you about welfare for humans and animals, medical facilities for both, and the planting of banyan trees along roads for shade and fruit. You picture the ancient road lined with saplings, and maybe a tired ox chewing thoughtfully as an imperial officer explains hygiene protocols. Ashoka's concern for animals was ahead of its time. He not only forbade certain sacrifices but also regulated the slaughter of specific creatures. No killing of parrots on Mondays. You half expect one of the edicts to say, and somewhere, a very lucky parrot is still alive today out of sheer ancestral gratitude. There's even a mention of treating prisoners more kindly, suggesting regular pardons, humane conditions, and visits by ethical overseers. You can almost hear a Mauryan prison guard grumbling, "Fine, we'll switch to organic lentils," while prisoners start a yoga circle in the courtyard. But here's where things get deliciously awkward. Despite all this moral earnestness, Ashoka never dismantled the imperial structure. He still had armies, taxes, surveillance, regional governors, a bureaucracy so tangled that even the Dharma Mahamantras probably needed receipts in triplicate to build a well. So you're left in this murky space between idealism and realpolitik. Ashoka preached renunciation, but lived in opulence. He encouraged peace, but ruled through administrative precision that required obedience. Is that contradiction, or just being human? You trace the edge of the edict with a fingertip. It's weathered, faint, A part of it's been chipped away. Maybe by time. Maybe by vandals. Some local legend even claimed that breaking a piece off and keeping it under your mattress would keep nightmares away. Not exactly what the emperor had in mind, but it's kind of poetic. And while we're here, yes, some edicts have jokes. Dry ones, granted, but they're there. One mentions how Ashoka tried to issue these moral instructions discreetly to neighboring kingdoms, so as not to offend their local traditions. You imagine the Mauryan version of a passive-aggressive email. Hi there. Just a friendly reminder not to be awful. Warm regards, Ashoka. As you rise, brushing off a bit of dust, you remember something odd from earlier, an edict that specifically banned useless ceremonies. Now that's a bold move in a place where every mango has its own festival. Ashoka's version of minimalist ethics might have made dinner parties a bit awkward. Sorry. No dancing. We're meditating on impermanence tonight. And yet, despite all these declarations and reforms, life in the empire continued much as it always had. Farmers still woke up at dawn. Merchants still haggled over spice prices. Kids still got in trouble for writing on walls, even if those walls already had official writing carved into them. The edicts didn't change everything. They weren't magic, but they stood there. They stood, and they reminded. Ashoka, for all his flaws and contradictions, didn't ask to be remembered as a conqueror. He asked to be remembered as someone who tried to make kindness official policy. And in that way, maybe his edicts succeeded more than we think. Because you're here now, reading them, listening to their echo, and that counts for something. The sky above is almost unnervingly still now, like it's waiting for a punchline you're too tired to deliver. The wind has wandered off. The stars blink like slow thoughts, and you're standing under the last of the pillars. Its shadow long gone, its stories clinging to the stone like old glue. This one's different, not in what it says, but where it is. Because here we are, in the modern age, and Ashoka's edicts are no longer just relics. They're national symbols, museum pieces, government mascots, and spiritual footnotes. You've seen his lion, yes, that one, on coins, paper currency, even on the emblem of modern India. That's Ashoka's pillar lion, reborn as a bureaucratic mood board. You almost laugh, imagining Ashoka reviewing modern government forms. No mention of Dharma. Where's the part about turtle welfare? Somewhere in some alternate reality, there's a Mauryan HR department with monthly kindness metrics and elephant meditation breaks. The point is, the edicts live, not dramatically, not glamorously, but doggedly, slowly, uneventfully, just there, through conquest and colonization, through translations and misunderstandings, through British officers scratching their heads over Brahmi script. The words stuck around like old friends who never quite learned when to leave. And that's the strange comfort of it all. Empires fall, religions splinter, sand eats cities, but somewhere, in a remote village or a crowded museum, there's still a piece of rock that says, be kind, be patient, respect life. The font may be worn, the grammar confusing, but the voice is still there, whispering from beneath the dust. Now, here's the best part. Ashoka likely never imagined any of this. He carved these thoughts into stone thinking only of his realm, his present. Not the distant future, not the internet, not bedtime podcasts about ancient inscriptions. And yet, his words found their way to you. It's kind of poetic, in a painfully slow, sleep-inducing way, like watching moss grow on a stone, which, now that you think about it, is probably what's happening right now on some forgotten edict in the Himalayan foothills. Slowly, tenderly, nature tucking it in like an old friend. But before you get too romantic, let's remember that the edicts also doubled as subtle flexes. Ashoka wanted you to know he had royal elephants and a functioning moral compass. That he could both regulate trade and advise you to be nice to your in-laws. That he had enough political clout to suggest meditating, and expect people to actually try it. And yet, you suspect, beneath the grandeur and strategy, there was something soft there. Maybe real, maybe tired. Ashoka lost a lot in the Kalinga War. He saw death, he felt guilt, and instead of building a bigger palace or planning another siege, he chose to inscribe regret into the land. Some edicts literally say, "I am deeply sorry." That's a rare thing for an emperor. It's even rarer for one to admit it to future strangers. But don't get swept away in sentimentality just yet. Remember, these edicts were found centuries later, and not all of them made sense. Some were partly eroded, others were in languages that had no surviving readers. One scholar famously translated an early fragment as, "Ashoka loves rice porridge," before realizing he was reading it upside down. So yes, interpretation gets tricky, and historians still argue whether certain edicts were ever widely read by the public. Were they truly educational tools? Or just ancient PR stunts for the emperor's spiritual rebrand? That uncertainty, that slow simmer of maybes, is what makes the whole story so perfect for sleep. Nothing explodes, no armies charge, no betrayals in the moonlight. Just a man, his thoughts, and a lot of very heavy rocks. You walk a bit now, past a cracked edict half buried in a dry riverbed. A farmer once used it as a footbridge. His grandson turned it into a chicken roost. Time repurposes everything, including moral advice. And yet, people keep rediscovering these stones. School groups visit them, pilgrims bow before them, politicians quote them, poorly. Somewhere, someone is writing a dissertation titled, "Ashoka's Edicts as Proto-Hashtags, a Semiotic Inquiry." You smile at the idea of Ashoka scrolling Instagram. Hashtag Dharma, hashtag anti-violence, hashtag plant more banyan trees. But here's the secret no one tells you. The real miracle isn't that Ashoka wrote these things. It's that we still care, that we listen, that we're willing to hear a long-dead king mumble in stone. Even if we don't fully understand him. Because history doesn't always shout. Sometimes it hums, low, steady, and completely uneventful. And somehow, that's enough. The night has fully settled now. The pillars fade into silhouette, their carvings unreadable in the dark. You hear a dog bark somewhere in the distance. Maybe it's guarding the edict. Maybe it just hates goats. You never know with village dogs. The air cools against your skin. The stars shift, and you're left with the strange calm that only ancient, immovable objects can provide. No rush, no urgency, just old words, worn smooth by centuries of silence. You exhale, slowly. Ashoka's still whispering, and you're still listening. Sweet dreams.